the PopUps doing it again. Another 14-pound 2-ounce carp in the net, just as light broke this morning. Single hook baits, boosted attraction. I'm up in Northern Ireland, I'm fishing my lake again. It's now mid-July, it's a couple of weeks since my last session up here, and things haven't really changed much. Fish are really conspicuous by their absence. Look, while I'm here, I thought I might just discuss something that I do a lot of, and I do it this time of year ready for my winter fishing. Now, I don't really do much winter fishing. I'm an old fart, and sitting out and really sort of slumming it in winter, I just don't find I have the passion to do it anymore. But when I do go, I need to have everything prepped and ready for my winter fishing. And one of the things I do a lot of in winter fishing is most of us will use single hook baits, pop-ups on a spinner rig or something, and we'll just keep moving them around over the areas that we're fishing, looking for fish. It's a great way. Fish aren't really feeding too heavily in the winter months unless you're on a very busy water where it sees a lot of bait during winter. But if you're on waters where there's not a huge amount of bait going in, the fish are going to have very limited windows of feeding, and they're going to be eating very small amounts, so you don't need a lot of bait out there. And what I do is I like to really over amplify those hook baits in winter. That means I want them really bright, so I'm going to whites, pinks and yellow spectrum, and I want them smelling and oozing attraction to get some sort of kind of register from the carp. So what I like to do is I like to pimp them up. Now, out of the pots, they are really good to go, and 99% of my fishing will be just as they are. But as I said, come these slower months where I'm trying to overload everything to get that bite, I like to overload my pop-ups. So how I do it is really simple. I take a flavour that I want to use, and that flavour today I'm going to give you the example is my pineapple and embutyric, which I have to be honest with you is one of my favourite all-time pop-ups. And it's bright yellow, very visual. Carp love it. They love the pineapple and they also love the embutyric. I'm not a fan of the smell of it myself because it's not very nice and it kind of sticks to everything it touches, but that's embutyric for you. But the carp do absolutely love it. And what I want to do is I want to just give that an extra boost, and how I do that is I take the under-counter special liquid flavour that is the pineapple and embutyric flavour that's blended in-house at Nutrabaits, and I add into the pot about 3 mils of that liquid flavour. Now it's a spare pot, it's an empty pot, and what I do then is I want to soften that down so it's not too strong. And what I've found best using is our bait sprays. Now our bait sprays are made with enhancers, triggers and sweeteners that are, and makes it really water soluble, and they add a small amount of the flavour, and they're great for spraying on your hook bait when you're casting out, especially if you're fishing runs waters where you're looking for very quick bites. But what I like to do is I like to take some of that, and my ratio is about 3 mils of the main flavour to about 7 to 8 mils of the actual bait spray, which is the exact same flavour combination. I put it in the pot and then I shake it all together. This gets poured over my pop-ups that I'm wanting to enhance, and I will leave that in that solution until I'm actually going fishing. But because I'm making it now in mid-July, I rotate the pots every time I'm down the shed. You know, I just take the pots and I turn them upside down so that all the liquid that's caught at the bottom is going back through and seeping through all those baits. And there does come a saturation point where it doesn't really take on anymore, and after a few months of doing that, there's still liquid there, but you know that they've soaked up as much as they need. I then drain that back off and I reuse that in my next pot, and it will last indefinitely in my spare pot until I need it. And as I said, I wouldn't do this to all of my baits, but I will have my winter pop-ups. So I'll have my plum and embutyric, my pineapple and embutyric, or whatever flavour combination I've got going out during the winter months. These will be prepped way in advance. As I say, it's now mid-July. I have them already in. And the great thing about it is once these are done, they will last indefinitely. There's another side note, and I'll come to this real fast. Our pop-ups have changed slightly in Nutrabaits. We now have the XB range, which every pop-up you buy now will be part of the XB range. Over the years, our pop-ups were really fantastic. They were really great at catching fish, but you know, the ingredients of yesteryear are not what's out available today, and it would be remiss of any company not to move with the times and sort of work with you know, better ingredients. And that's exactly what the boys in Nutrabaits have been doing for the last while to create the XB range. XB stands for extra buoyancy, and these things are incredible. It allows them to overload the natural enhancers into it without it actually losing any of its buoyancy. A lot of the rigs today are metal heavy, especially like Ronnies and spinners. It's big size 4s or size 2 hooks. It's loads of metal wear and weights and whatever else, swivels. So there's a lot of metal wear there that can drag down a normal pop-up. And so our new XB pop-ups, a 12mm pop-up on the XBs will keep a size 4 spinner up. I think they gave up testing after about 4 weeks. There was no sign of it dropping at all. No droop, no sag. So you know that when you've got baits out there with the XB range, they're going to stay and sit exactly how you want them to, without any potential loss, especially if you're a long session angler and they're out in the water for a bit. So by adding all these liquids on top of it, we're not going to affect the buoyancy of that XB range, which is really great. And as I said, this tactic I've employed for a number of years now. It really has stood its pace with, you know, I'm watching what other carp anglers are doing, and I'm holding my own with, as a tourist angler. You know, I'm not like the locals who know the waters here like the back of their hands. They can come up, spot where the fish are sitting and all the rest, and maybe give them a bit of bait. As a tourist carp angler, where you're having to travel big distances to go, you're on the back foot and your hands are tied behind your back from the get-go. And having edges like this in your pocket will always help you stay pace. You may not outfish the locals, but you'll stay pace with them once you start utilising all your tools that are available to you. And this is one of my tools for winter fishing, spring fishing, late autumn even. It really is a go-to. Now, the other thing I like to do is I even take some of these 12mm over glugged pop-ups, I split them in half, and I just put them on as a sighter on top of my boilies, and that extra amplification, again, even in summertime, it does seem to get more bites. That little tip of creating you know, your bespoke pop-ups that stand out, that are really super visual and are pumping out attraction into the water column. In winter, you know, when you're searching out spots for fish, it really does help you put fish on the bank. So it's worthwhile doing. I know it's a little bit of hassle, a little bit of work, but it's a great way of getting your baits to pop. But before I go, I just want to say something. This is not a plug for any company. I work with Nutrabaits, but I don't have any affiliations with anyone else. But I do think this is a really cool gadget, and one that on paper I looked at it and went, who'd ever want to use that, until I came a cropper, and I'm going to get into that in a second. Basically, I like to use hard hook baits. It means that nuisance fish and other fish and bird life as well don't sort of do me while the bait's out in the water. And the problem with trying to get a bait needle through any hard hook bait is it can go terribly wrong. And I've learned this to my cost a couple of times. I thought I would have learned by now, but accidents happen, and I've had bait needles go zipping through the baits when you're trying to force them that little extra bit to get through, and then all of a sudden it caves and goes and comes out the other side and goes ripping into your finger. The last time I did it, I had to get a Stanley blade and do open surgery on myself because my fishing buddy legged it because he couldn't stand the sight of blood. So it's not pleasant when you do it to yourself. It hurts, and you know, cuts on the bank are never a good thing. So I use a lot of hard hookers, as I've said, and I want a way of actually getting them onto the bait needle without potentially impaling myself. That's the Bait Soak Complex, by the way. Brilliant product, and that's why I keep all my hard hookers in, to give them that extra bit of soakage. They don't soften out, but they really sort of, oh, it's a great product. Anyway, these are the tweezers from, I think the company's called PopUps. I'm nearly sure that's the name of the company. And they are from the Netherlands. They make all things for bait boats and little things, gizmos that help you pimp boats, and they do stands for the boats to sit on. But they brought these out. These are obviously one of those 3D printed jobbies. And what they are is there are tweezers, and they come in two different sizes, 10 mil probably, even maybe smaller, all the way up to about a 15 or a 16 mil, and this one will go much larger to a 24 mil. And they also have little cutters at the back, which I'll talk about in a second. And what it allows you to do is, especially if you've got very glugged hook baits, which I've just been talking about, you can dip in and tweeze them out of the actual pot itself without it all going over your fingers, which if you're using smelly baits like butyric, it's worth it. What you do then is you can put your bait needle through it, and there's a little hole at the bottom where it'll come straight out. That means all your force has been done. You can hold the tweezer tight, and it will allow you push that through, and you have no chance of impaling yourself. Absolutely stupendous little gadget that you think you don't need until you do. And if you use hard hook baits, I'm telling you, this is something you really need to get hold of. At the bottom end, they have these little blades, and the little blades, you can put your finger on them. They're not sharp, but they're enough of a blade for you to slice a boilie or a pop-up into half, so that if you just wanted a quick way of cutting your baits, rather than use the scissors, you can just pop it in there, push it down, and it'll fall out into your hand, and it's neatly cut in half, and that you can use that as your topper on your hard hook bait. As I said, inexpensive, but could possibly save you a trip to A&E, which I've had on a couple of occasions. Well worth the investment. Right, until something happens on the fishing front, that's me out for now. But I wanted just to kind of show you a little tip of using our XP range of pop-ups and how to really make them stand out for the winter months.